Hello, I'm Jacques Halbronn. I would like to continue my lessons, my lectures on French astrology, which doesn't mean only on French astrology by itself, but what French astrologers discover, think about astrology, especially myself, that I am not necessarily the result of a sort of school of French school of astrology by some way, some aspect. I would like to discuss on the point of astrology as being basically a children knowledge. Astrology is made for children, doesn't mean, or if you prefer, it's made for parents. Astrology cannot have a more obvious application than when it is connected with the expectation of a child who is expected to be born, or who is just newly born. Born meaning to be someone that one bears, that a woman bears. And Ptolemy, when you read the Tetrabiblos, the quadripartite in Latin of Ptolemy, who belongs to the 2nd century AD, you discover that finally a part of his work was dedicated to the description of the child to appear. It was supposed to be made before the birth, ideally at the time of the conception. It is quite understandable. Today it's the same. Today the parents ask for an echography to know some things about the child who is not yet born. His sex, his possible infirmities, sicknesses, his formations. You want to know about that, and it might influence their decision to abort, for instance. So when the child is born, all these predictions about what the child is going to be physically are becoming useless, because you know what happened after the birth. Prediction about the child of his appearance are perfectly useless. Second part is when the rest of the chart, the rest of the questions are connected, in fact, with the destiny of the child. When the child has not yet started his life, and you want to know what's going on, what's going to become of him. But obviously, this sort of astrology is not connected with adult clients. Because when you are an adult, all those questions about what you're going to be or how you look like have no meaning, because you already have the answers. And if you don't even have all the answers, you can have the answers without using astrology, through other means, through other practices. So astrologers have forgotten the children aspect of their practice, especially the aspect before the birth. And it's ridiculous when you think of it, that you should try to check things that people know. I know that it's a way to say, well, we are going to prove astrology. But the question is not to prove astrology for the public. The public wants to know things he doesn't know. He doesn't want to check if what the astrologer says is right or not. or not. I mean, he's right. He's ready to check if what he predicts will be confirmed or not. But he's not interested by the astrologer who says things that you can immediately confirm or that you already know. The client is not here to help the astrologer to prove that he's right, but the astrologer has to be useful by predicting things which are not yet known. What children will look like is something which only makes sense when the child is not yet born. What the children will become is not necessarily useful when you already have some sort of knowledge about the child when he is at a certain age. Not speaking of the case when you have a client who is 40 or 50 years old. It becomes ridiculous. On the other hand, the question of the death is maybe an important point for astrology. I mean, astrology is connected with the birth and with his death, not in between, not what is coming in between. Because the death is also a great mystery. When will I die? From what? By what? Because of what will I die? That's a question interesting. So, astrologers are misleading and misleaded when they believe and they use astrology for other things, other purposes than the birth of the child, before the birth and just after the birth, and the question of death just before the death, and I think in between you have other practices. So that's what I will call it. Astrology is basically made and destined for the parents when the child appears, and for the children to know when their parents will die. Well, in a way, you know. And as to cycles, of course there are cycles during the life which might be useful to know, especially the 7 years cycle. But on the other hand, I'm not sure these cycles are so useful. They are useful from a scientific point of view, of course, because man wants to understand what happens. But the public, general public, is not necessarily bound to know about all this knowledge, this esoteric knowledge, and I'm not sure it's necessary. So, and you know that the problem of the object and subject is also a question. When you announce to someone something, he will be influenced by what you say. And you can also be influenced by creating certain situations because it has been predicted. We heard of some people who decide to die on the day which was announced astrologically. I think it's Cardano in the 16th century who is supposed to have been victim of this sort of consideration. Geoffrey Dean, my Australian friend, who is well known by his work, recent advances, was saying about the works of Gauquelin, the result of Gauquelin, something was not without interest, which is that parents might try to have their children born under a certain rising sign or under a certain planet which rises, and it will jeopardize the statistical result of Gauquelin. It's quite possible, because in fact the Gauquelin's works is not that obvious, you know. It's just a matter of a small percentage compared to the probability. And according to Geoffrey Dean, this extra probability, the extra results, would derive from the fact, which makes the difference between hazard and chance and a real scientific result, it would derive from the fact that some parents watching on the almanacs, for instance, will try to have the births happening at a certain moment when a certain star, certain planet will arise. And since it's just a matter of a few hours to have a rising planet or not, such and such rising planet, it's not a matter of waiting for years, no. It's just a matter of a few hours, more or less. And I believe that in a certain way the astrologer was helping to have the birth arrive at the proper time. He was also probably a doctor, and he might use astrology to have things occurring earlier or later, according to the expectations from the point of view of the right planet. It might have been as just a matter of religion, a religious link, that if you were belonging to a certain caste, social caste, you wanted your children be born under a certain planet which was a totem of this caste. So it was more than advisable to do that to find a way to have the child being born under this special star. It may be a planet, maybe a star, but for Goklan it was a planet. And my conclusion is that finally it is an artifact. And it's possible that after a certain time the children tended to be born under a certain planet because they belong to a long line of people who try to be born under this planet, or whose parents tried the child to be born under a certain planet. So it's a creation of man. But astrology in any case is a creation of man. That's a fact. It's right for the cycle of Saturn, but it's probably right also for what Goklan has discovered.